Hey, it's Danny from Carp Global in Preston, and in this video I just want to talk to you real quick about carp care and looking after carp and what kind of stuff you might need to do that effectively without upsetting anybody or getting yourself thrown off a fishery, or indeed even worse, damaging or harming a fish. Many of us are fishing waters where the fish are getting increasingly larger, bigger and bigger fish, and big fish require a certain degree of care, even more so than the smaller ones. Now, of course, you should look after all the fish that you catch, and that's why it's super important to have the right equipment. But when you are fishing for 30s, 40s, or indeed larger, or indeed when you go abroad, you're fishing in France and you might have had a few beers or whatever, super important that you've got the right kit in place ready, so that you're not worried about hurting a fish or damaging a fish, or indeed causing yourself some sort of problem with a fishery. So the right equipment, super important. And I think long gone are the days of hunooking mats that are all thin and flimsy, and you put your fish on there and you can feel the stones through it. You don't want a flimsy unhooking mat, and ideally you want to get yourself a cradle. Now, this one's from Shimano. This is from the tactical range. Really nice, easy to carry, super light. It clips to the barrow, and you can see that it's got this awesome cover, which is actually the old style carp sack material, which will calm the carp down if you put this over its eyes, and you can sort of use this to keep the carp calm once you've got it into the mat. So you've got to get yourself an awesome cradle or a very well protected padded unhooking mat with sides, ideally to avoid the carp sort of diving off and going off into the thorns, or down the banking, or into the other lake, or any kind of crazy eventuality. You want to kind of avoid that, and you want to think to yourself, where should you site your cradle and where should you site your unhooking mat, right? And certainly putting it next to the holly bush with no room behind you, you're not doing yourself any favours. So what you want to be doing is thinking about getting your mat or your cradle and putting that in an area where you've got free movement all around that area. So when you do get a fish, you're not going to be impeded by any sort of branches or prickly things that are going to stab into you, cause you a problem. Potentially you could drop the fish, you could damage the fish. Now, before you even think about putting a fish on any kind of mat or any kind of cradle, what you need to be doing is making sure that you've got yourself a supply of water. And what you can do, there's not really any excuse, is get yourself one of these collapsible buckets. And when you're carrying your cradle, with this thing just folds in half, you can keep this at all times packed down in there. So when you get to the lake, the first thing you want to do is get yourself a bucket full of lake water, and indeed, as soon as you know you've got a fish on and you leave it resting in the landing net, before you even think about bringing it onto the bank, first thing you do is pour some of that water all over your net, or all over your mat, all over your cradle, and then refill that bucket so that all of the cradle's wet, ready to receive that fish, and your bucket is refilled at the side, ready for you to keep that fish hydrated throughout this short time that it's going to spend with you on the bank, right? So make sure that the legs are all secured, everything's adjusted. You don't want anything uneven. You don't want to create an opportunity where a fish can sort of slide off. And what you want to be doing is getting your sling ready, so that you're not messing around having to then open up a sling and get something out of a bag, or mess around while you've got the fish on the bank, right? So once you've hydrated all of your net, your mat, your sling, get your waist sling out, put that on top of your cradle, and again a little bit of water on there, ready for the fish to come out from the water. You can roll the net up, detach the handle from the net, roll it up, bring it out carefully. You're bringing it onto the bank, you're putting it on a nice wet unhooking mat or cradle. It's gone straight on top of the sling. All you need to do, get that hook out real quick, if it's not already fallen out. It often does in that net, and then remove your net. The fish is ready in the sling, ready to be zipped up, ready to be weighed, and then with minimal effort you can put it back down on that cradle, on that mat. You can get the pictures real quick, do the sling up once again, and you're off back to the lake, get the fish back as soon as possible, and get your rods back out. You're ready for the next one. Or indeed, while you've got the fish resting in that net, before you even bring it into the bank, you can go and get that other rod out as well, because the fish will be perfectly fine in there, as long as you've got a system in place that means that you know exactly what you're doing, how you're going to get into the water to net the fish, what you're going to do, where you're going to put the net. You can see out there we've got the net lock system on a bank stick that we can adjust, and we can leave the fish out there. We can take the handle into two pieces of the landing net that I'm using. That'll stay out there fine, locked on that bank stick, and the fish will be fine out there. I can come back and get the rod out, I can get all of this stuff ready, and it means that I can bring that fish in with minimal effort without any risk of damaging the fish. I know that everything's controlled, I know where everything is, I know that I'm not messing around with thorns and different bits and pieces, because I put this in the right place. The sling's ready, the cradle's ready, the bucket's ready, all the different bits and pieces that I need are in place, ready to catch a carp. So that's kind of like a little bit about carp care, kind of things you want to be doing. These cradles are awesome. Don't mess around with flimsy unhooking mats. And also, one thing that I've not shown you on this video is make sure you've got the Carp Care antiseptic liquid. So if you do get a fish that does need a little bit of treatment, maybe on a hook hold or on scales, around the fins, anything like that, you can safely apply that liquid, knowing that it's going to help to treat any fungal infection, get rid of any nasty bacteria, things like that. The fish is going to have a better chance, especially around spawning time, of healing a little bit quicker, and meaning that that fish is going to be back to its usual self before you know it. So make sure you know what you're doing, get everything laid out properly in your swim, make sure that you've got your water, make sure that you've got your unhooking mat set in the right place, make sure that you're not messing around with inferior gear, make sure before you bring that fish onto the bank that everything's set, the scales are zeroed, you've got your forceps there, you've got your antiseptic there, everything's in place, ready. So when you get that fish on the bank, it should literally be out of the water for only a few minutes while you get those important pictures, you get that weight, and then you get it back into the water. It's Danny from Carp Global in Preston. All of this stuff is available on our website. That's the Aqua floating recovery sling in the bag. We'll do another video on the sling, but for all intents and purposes, all you need to make sure that you're looking after the fish from the moment you catch them to the moment you put them back. Make sure you've got that antiseptic, make sure you've got those forceps as well, a towel at the side to dry your hands, making sure that you're not getting slime and things all over your tackle and your scales. Make sure you don't drop anything on the fish, which I've seen people do in the past. Think about what you're doing, plan for what you're doing, and you should be fine. You should be able to deal with even the largest fish. All the best, tight lines. I'll see you on the bank. It's Danny from Carp Global. Bye bye.